My Friend Hitler by Yukio Mishima is a play that was published in 1968 and dramatizes the fall of Ernst Roehm, who was the leader of the SA, the paramilitary wing of the NSDAP. The play was written by Mishima as a response to critics who claimed that he could not portray male characters. Insulted by this, Mishima wrote My Friend Hitler, which has an all-male cast of 4 characters: Adolf Hitler, Ernst Roehm, the NSDAP economist Gregor Strasser, and the elderly German industrialist Gustav Krupp. Today, it is regarded as one of Mishima's best plays, and in one production, Mishima himself even played Hitler. The play begins with Hitler giving a speech from the balcony of the Chancellery in June of 1934. As he explains how the degeneracy of the Weimar era was coming to an end, he is occasionally interrupted by thunderous applause. Standing next to him are Strasser and Roehm. Partway through the speech, Gustav Krupp enters on stage and signals for Roehm to come speak to him. Roehm steps back from the balcony and walks towards Krupp, and then the first lines of dialogue begin. Krupp and Roehm discuss the essay. As was the case in real life, Roehm wanted to make his essay the core of the German army, which the Prussian ministers vehemently opposed. Roehm tells Krupp of the revolutionary character intrinsic to the essay, to which Krupp tells him that Hitler wants to put revolutionary sentiment behind him and work on building a strong Germany. As the speech ends, the 3 men congratulate Hitler inside the Chancellery, and it is revealed that Hitler asked to speak to each of them after he was done with his speech. He asks to speak to Roehm first, as the other 2 exit stage. Hitler and Roehm reminisce about good memories before they get to the reason why Roehm was summoned to the Chancellery. Hitler tells Roehm that his essay is becoming a political problem and lists several reasons why powerful elites are turned off by the actions of the essay. As he says in one of his lines, "No, you had your own problems. What can you say about the disgusting things the SA did during the last 2 years? No wonder the Reichswehr were put off. You made hideouts and basements and warehouses. You tortured, kidnapped, demanded ransoms. I've even heard the story that in some districts, troopers took their rivals in love affairs into basements, tied them up on the wall, and cut them up." This line is not something Mishima came up with out of his own imagination. In real life, during the purges of SA leaders, the SA leader Edmund Heinz, who had been ordered to be killed, was caught in the middle of homosexual intercourse by the men who were sent there to execute him. In the early 1930s, the SA was perceived as a hive of thugs, drunkards, and secret homosexuals by 2 powerful groups which Hitler courted: the Rhineland industrialists like Krupp and the old Prussian military aristocrats. Hence why Mishima also gave Hitler the line, "It's no joke, Ernst. We're up against a wall. I have been handed this statement by Defense Minister von Blomberg. You can regard it as representing the Reichswehr's consensus, or as the Prussian National Army's tradition beginning to roar at last." Hitler takes a piece of paper out of his pocket and shows it to Roehm. He reads, "His Excellency, Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany, dear Herr Chancellor, we hereby respectfully request that either the government's own power be employed to immediately relieve the current political tension, or the President be asked to declare martial law and government power be transferred to the Reichswehr." Hitler, "They're asking I choose one or the other." Hitler then informs Roehm that he hasn't made up his mind on what to do, and would like both him and Strasser to have breakfast with him the next morning. Both Roehm and Gregor Strasser, who enters on stage as Roehm exits, each agree to have breakfast in the Chancellery with him. Act 1 closes shortly after. Act 2 begins with Hitler and Roehm smoking cigarettes around the breakfast table. Interestingly, this was an oversight on Yukio Mishima's part, as Hitler was not fond of smoking. Through the dialogue, we learn that Strasser never showed up despite being asked to, and that Roehm agreed to feign illness and go on vacation so that the political situation could die down. Furthermore, Roehm also agreed to forbid the SA from wearing their uniforms or marching with their weapons until his illness subsides. Roehm bids his friend goodbye, and after he exits stage, Krupp emerges from the balcony, having been eavesdropping the entire time. It is revealed that Krupp was asked to do this by Hitler, who wanted to ensure the wealthy industrialists' political backing. Hitler is genuinely troubled by the prospect of having to choose between his friend Roehm, who he admits is out of line, and the irate Prussian generals in charge of the army. Krupp gives counsel to Hitler as the 2 men exit stage left. Shortly after, Roehm runs back on stage in hot pursuit by Strasser. It is quickly apparent that Roehm despises Strasser, who asks that Roehm indulge him in a conversation. Knowing Roehm's penchant for revolutionary activity, Strasser builds rapport by telling him he also desires a revolution, which shocks Roehm. He also maligns Gustav Krupp, who Roehm also does not like, to get Roehm to put his guard down. After Roehm agrees to listen to him, Strasser tells Roehm that both their lives are in danger. He points out that Hitler is between a rock and a hard place, and that he will never be president if he does not disband the SA, but Roehm will not allow this to happen. He pleads for Roehm to betray Hitler and lead a revolution of stormtroopers against both the army and Chancellor Hitler himself. Strasser argues that if he does not do this, then both of them would lose their lives in the coming days ahead. Insulted by the plot, and believing Strasser to be conniving for power, Roehm walks off to go on his vacation. Strasser curses Roehm as a fool and nervously walks off stage in turn. Act 2 ends with a visibly conflicted Hitler pacing around stage, agonizing to himself over the best course of action. After a few moments of this, he gestures offstage in both directions and orders Goering and Himmler to enact the order they discussed. Act 3 begins at midnight on June 30th, several days after Act 2. Hitler and Krupp stand on the balcony looking out into the distance. Krupp asks Hitler if the order was done, and Hitler tells him that it was. He tells Krupp that while Strasser accepted his fate, Roehm reportedly lost his composure and kept screaming that it was all Goering's plot. Krupp thanks Hitler and congratulates him, telling him that no more men will dream of a revolution, and that the army and the Prussian generals are now thoroughly behind Hitler. Hitler remarks that the last gunshots of Germans shooting Germans were behind them, and now Germany could proceed united into the future ahead. This concludes the plot synopsis, and we can now provide analysis and give critical commentary. One question that people may have about the play is to what degree is My Friend Hitler historically accurate? Ultimately, the play is a dramatization rather than a history report. For example, the scene of Hitler smoking with Roehm is ahistorical, as Hitler famously never smoked, and it is certainly the case that Hitler never asked the elderly industrialist Krupp to eavesdrop on his own conversations with Roehm. But instances like this can be chalked up to Mishima trying to write a play and giving himself artistic license. The broader plot points, like the conflict between the SA and the army, and the executions of Roehm and Strasser, are true historical events. If you would like to study the actual history of the Night of the Long Knives in detail, I will link 2 videos from the channel Zoomer Historian in the description below. Another question which is probable to be asked is if the play is subversive from a right-wing perspective. For context, the play's author, Yukio Mishima, regarded Hitler as a masterful politician devoted to his country, although not necessarily the perfect or ideal man. Mishima is rightly regarded as an ultranationalist and a traditionalist, bearing many similarities to writers like Julius Evola and Ernst Jünger. Moreover, like Hitler, Evola, and Jünger, Mishima saw liberal democracy as a cancerous ideology which destroys a nation on the altar of modernism and cosmopolitanism. His life would come to an end when he led a failed coup to restore Japan to a warrior society, and he committed seppuku. For all of these reasons, Mishima is loathed by the left today and represents one of Japan's best right-wing authors in modern times. As for the play itself, nothing in it indicates subversion. Mishima portrays Hitler as a devout nationalist who cares about his people, and unlike liberals who love to paint Hitler as a histrionic madman, Mishima writes Hitler to be an analytic and intelligent leader. He makes out Roehm to be a fool and Strasser to be a conniving, Iago-like character, but makes Hitler a sympathetic character who is forced by circumstance to order the death of Roehm. In conclusion, My Friend Hitler is an interesting play by an equally interesting author. The play does not offer much in terms of historical education or political philosophy, but it does not try to. Instead, it is a work of art, first and foremost, that happens to be set in National Socialist Germany. As such, if one has an appreciation for theater, My Friend Hitler is a worthwhile read. Otherwise, your dollar would be spent better on books of a political or philosophical nature.